Hi, everyone. Today we have a Zubaan panel on Northeast India, which we have decided to call Friendships and Frontiers, Building and Nurturing Feminist Writing Communities in Northeast India. So on the panel today, we have Thingnam Anjulika Samam, Anungla Zoe Longkumer, and Banamalika Chaudhary. I'll give a quick intro to all of our panelists today before moving on to the main panel. So Thingnam Anjulika Samam is an independent researcher based in the North Indian state of Manipur, who has written extensively on gender and conflict in the region. Her most recent work was documentation of Manipuri women's memories of the Second World War and the Battle of Imphal. An award-winning journalist and translator, she has translated many poems, stories, and plays from Manipuri to English. She is also the editor of Crafting the Word, Writings from Manipur, a collection of women's writings from Manipur published by Zubaan in 2019. You can see some of the books that Anju has very conveniently displayed behind her. Next, we move on to Anungla Zoe Longkumer, who is an independent artist drawn to inspired and intuitive pursuits in music, writing, filmmaking, painting, papermaking, and research on traditional arts. She is also an advocate for a wasteless, sustainable way of living. She has authored Folklore of Eastern Nagaland and is also the editor of The Many That I Am, Writings from Nagaland, a collection of short stories, poetry, and illustrations by Naga women artists, published by Zubaan in 2019. Her film projects have also been screened at prominent international film festivals around the world. And lastly, on the panel, we have Banamalika Chaudhary, who is mostly a disheartened feminist activist from Assam that we all identify with. She has used storytelling as a tool of questioning power in her personal and professional work. In her ever-expanding array of activities, she has added drawing, filmmaking, entrepreneurship, gardening, theater, cooking, research, writing, and very recently playing with clay. She draws her sustenance from the feminist movement and its solidarity. She's currently fantasizing about not having to write another proposal or project report and living in a farm on a foothill by a spring. We are also very excited to announce that Banamalika has also put together a volume of women's writings from Assam titled Riverside Stories, which is also coming out in a month or two by Zubaan. So that's a very brief intro to our very, very interesting panel, who, as you can see, have dabbled not just in writing, but almost everyone has dabbled in filmmaking and different ways of storytelling. And the panel today, we will be discussing not just about writing, but also building communities in Northeast India. So I'll start off with actually Anju, and my question is to the entire panel. And this is about putting together a volume, and all of you belong to different states in the Northeast, and Northeast has been marked as a conflict-prone or conflict-ridden zones in the past 7 decades. So writing or commissioning writing in a state, in states which have a lot of diversity and which has not historically prioritized women's writings or other gender minorities, how have you managed to, what were the ways or how have you managed to think of the book or conceptualize the book and keep a balance between the different forms of writing? So Anju, would you like to?
Thank you, Bidisa, for the wonderful introduction and for the very thoughtful question. For a long time, I was keen on working with women's writing in Manipur, from Manipur, but the main bulk of writing was in Manipuri, which means that it has to be in translation if we wanted to cater to a wider audience. So when Zubaan offered the chance to bring together this volume called Crafting the Word, Writings from Manipur, it was almost heaven sent for me, because this was something which I had been dreaming of for more than 5-10 years before Zubaan gave me the opportunity. Gathering the writings, women's writing from different parts of Manipur was the major challenge, because one of the most visible form of writing was in Manipuri, which is mostly done by the Meitei women. For the general information of the audience, I wanted to point out that while we talk of Manipur, when we talk of Manipur, there are more than 33 ethnic communities residing here, each of them with their own unique culture, identity, aspiration, and even language. So when it comes to gathering the writings from all these different communities, one of the major problem was uh, which community has been able to put their stories, their poems, their songs in words and in the printed form. That was my priority, and obviously, like, because among all the community, only the Meitei community, they have their own script. So they have been able to come up with a lot of writing. So my challenge was, how do I balance this with the writings or the storytelling traditions from other communities who do not have a script and who are mostly relying on oral traditions, like for storytelling. So that was one of the major challenges. The other challenge, like even among the Meitei women, there were a lot of Meitei women who were writing and who were, like, one woman would be like, when I approached them, they would say, like, oh, I have written 7 books of poetry or 6 books of short stories. And then to read through all that and to gather the essential writing, which I feel would fit into the book, that took a lot of time. For the other communities, we try to reach out to the Kukijo community. I try to reach out to the Tangkhul community. I asked all my friends among the Khoibu tribe, the Maring, and everyone. But the thing is, like, among most of the other communities, women's writing was almost very low, almost not visible at all. Among the Tangkhul community, there was one or two lady who were writing in their language, and some among the younger generation who were, like, writing in English. So my the negotiation that I had to do in the end was like, okay, even if among the other community, they are not writing in their original language, because most of the writings from the Meitei community were in translations, are brought in translations in the book, Crafting the Word. So my negotiation was like, if in the other communities they are writing in English, and if it fits into the general theme of the book, then this should be brought in. This was one negotiation which I had to do. Sadly, geography also played like a huge role, a huge obstacle in reaching out to all the communities, because some of the communities, they're living very far away from here, and then communication was was quite bad, and I had to know the right person in their community for them to be able to identify, yes, there are 2 women or 1 woman there who's writing poetry or who's writing songs. So we tried to reach out to a few women who were writing songs, but the response was not as immediate or as fast as I would have loved to love it to be, because we were also working on a deadline. We had to finish this book within a short period, like, a certain amount of time. So luckily, I had friends, like, I remember her a lot now. She has passed away recently. Helam Haukip. She was the former chairwoman of the Kuki in Manipur, and one of the only women to have had that post. So with her, we try to reach out to women in Churachandpur. We try to reach out to women in Chandel, like, who speaks Kuki or Mijo, and where she told me that there were a few women who were writing songs, but the problem is, like, when we go beyond the most urban area, it becomes very difficult to even talk to people on the phone, because people will change their phone numbers, then we have to ask someone to please go and find that phone number for that person. So very sadly, Helen and I, though we tried, we could not include some of the songwriters from Churachandpur, but we were happy, I was very happy to have included 2 Tangkhul women in the volume. and one of them who was writing in Manipuri of all things, and we translated that from Manipuri, what she has written in Manipuri into English. One, Yuimi, she was writing in English, so her very powerful writing. So we were able to bring that together. So these were some of the negotiations, some of the challenges that we had in bringing together the book, and I hope that answered your questions.
No, no, it did. I'll come back to you later, actually, because I also wanted to focus on how, like you were talking about the communities and how difficult it was to also bridge that gap. And I wanted to also delve a little bit into the region also. Maybe Anu can also bring that out. See how when we look at writing in the Northeast, it has a very strong colonial history of how communities are demarcated or how writing or oral histories were built. So maybe Anu, you can also like maybe look into that or speak about that in your experience of how you brought out some writings, knowing Nagaland's colonial history and the relationship between the communities there, and how conflict has also played a little, not a little, a major part in that. So, Anu?
Yeah. Thank you, Bidisha, and for putting this together. In putting together the many that I am, I think the biggest challenge was myself, not being from any kind of literary background. I have to state this. And it came as a surprise when I received that phone call from Urvashi, from Zubaan, with a request or an invitation to put this book together. So what I did was I just started with the connections immediately around me and spread the word around that I was looking for submissions from women writers in Nagaland. And there was actually no question as such that it was going to be in any other language but English. Here in Nagaland, we have, you can almost say it's like kind of a total conversion, and a lot of people, like today, we communicate a lot in English among all the different tribes here in Nagaland. So it was definitely going to be in, submissions were requested to be sent in the English language on the themes of belonging, identity, and self. Excuse me, because I was very curious. I was pretty new here in Nagaland. I had just come to actually live here. Excuse me, actually live here in Nagaland only in 2015, and I received this call. I think it was in 2017. So I was just getting to know Nagaland, the Naga people, and beginning to meet people. So clearly that I was very curious. I wanted to know what really people thought of themselves, especially women, how they identified themselves and what they thought of themselves, So the theme was on identity, self, and belonging. And when the submissions started pouring in, I realized that a lot of the women were actually writing poetry, I was thinking it was going to be mostly short stories, a compilation of short stories, but I began to receive a lot of poetry. And so that's why the book is equal, short stories and poetry. With regards to, reaching out to people in the more remote areas of Nagaland, it was kind of fortunate that earlier I had just worked on this folklore book, of Eastern Nagaland, which is the more remote area that's bordering with Myanmar. And so what I did was, because also of the lack of time, it was just my very first time doing something like this. So I was keeping in mind the 5 months that I was told, that the book had to be done within. So I was trying to keep that timeline as well. So what I did was I just selected a song from the Chang Naga community, and also another one from the Konyak Naga community, so that, like all the areas of Nagaland were covered in that sense. But there was no translations as such that I had to do, because the two songs that I selected from Eastern Nagaland, they already had been translated. So I could just concentrate on, working with whatever submissions were coming in. Yes, with regards to, our oral tradition, it's, when it comes to oral traditions, it's like, we are always in any culture where there is this tradition of oral story, oral passing on of our history, our culture, our traditions. It's always like on the verge, it's always like, situated, like, say, on a precipice, you can say, because it depends so much on one generation passing on all this to orally to the next generation. And so when Nagaland was invaded, and we were you can say literally forced into a new belief system and a new education system, our oral tradition, you can say, fell over that precipice, and a lot was less lost that way. But having said that, I feel that we in Nagaland, we have also adopted this new system of education for our own good, and a lot of you can say a lot of advantage has been taken off also, of us having, now communicating in the English language. And so the book, you can say, like, The Many That I Am, actually offers a glimpse into the hearts of, Naga women living in Naga society, at that time, at that period of time, because there is so much of everything, there's so much of trauma, there's so much of hopelessness, there's so much of introspection, there's a lot of telling things as they are, there was such a need. Actually, when the story started coming in, I was a little worried, because everything was sounding so sad, and everything was sounding like, it kind of pulled me down a bit in that whole process. But then I realized that, yes, these are stories that need to be told. There comes a point in time when you have to tell things as they are, and we begin with that, but some of the stories also talk of hope and, looking into the future and asserting our own position, in society as women. Yeah.
Thank you, Anu. That was quite insightful. And no matter how many times I hear you putting together the book, I always learn new things every time you talk about the book. So that's always fun, actually, with everyone. So I'll move on to Mona. I don't think I give Mona any prompts, because I'm sure she has a lot of information about putting together this book. Yeah, Mona, over to you.
Yeah, thanks. Really, when I hear, and every time I hear Anju and Anung talk about their books and how they had to do this within a time frame, how time was a challenge, and and then I go, yeah, I can't really blame it on time, the delay, nor can I blame it on conflict or disaster or anything like that. I think I have taken the longest time in publishing history to put the book together. But anyway, yeah, so to begin with, I'm just thinking, yeah, I wanted to put this when particularly, I wanted to do this from before. And when I saw Zubaan, other books coming up, Anju's book, Anung's book, and I felt that I should do this for Assam. I had certain ideas, and also that I, being from the feminist movement, working with women from across Assam, from across class, from across communities all the time. And I I have heard so many stories, you know, I've heard so many stories, and I wanted to bring these stories together. And I felt that that we need to hear these stories because, you know, Assam has a rich tradition of writing. Women's writings is also mostly in Assamese. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of women's writings, you know, all of that is there, although in English that's very less. And yet we see, you know, only a certain kind of women's writings, you know, so that thing of, it's like the stories of either, you know, two things together. It's either like Anungla said, that these are very sad stories, or these are also stories of very proper women, you know, like, you know, good women, respectable women, whatever way you put that, certain, you know, kinds of stories that we get to hear. But the other stories that I was hearing from these women, you know, and a lot of these also through Facebook as I follow them, or, you know, more and more stories I hear, most of these are very irreverent, you know, challenge stories that challenge the society, or thinking around gender, you know, young women saying really, you know, yeah, challenging things. So I wanted to, you know, these stories were really, and nobody was talking about, people are, publishing industry definitely is not, you know, I don't see that happening. You know, there are not many of these stories published. So I felt that you know, if I do a book, and I do want to do a book, and then I want to bring these stories together. I also wanted to break that thing of, you know, yeah, I mean, whose stories get told. So that whose stories get told, whose stories get heard, you know, there are, you look into, yeah, as it is, you know, somehow women's stories or only become like anecdotes at some point. So I wanted to, you know, I thought that this year will be an opportunity to turn these into real stories that, yeah. So that's how we started. And in terms of, you know, my reaching out to different communities or different identities, I didn't have such ambitions. Assam is an extremely diverse place. So it's not possible that, you know, I didn't want that consciousness to, you know, be part of my, yeah, that consciousness to guide this process at all, because it's not possible. I can't include everybody, nor can I exclude, you know, specific. Like I said, that I knew that there would be we will break some barriers which exist, you know, in terms of class, or in terms of language. And by language, I don't just mean like English or Assamese, but I also mean the kind of language, that it doesn't have to be like a very proper diction, you know. That is another thing that always kind of there is so much of a demand that you have to have like a great language, great skill, you know, to be able to tell your stories very, you know, a command over the language, as they say, you know. So I wanted to break those barriers. That the stories would be important. So that's what I looked into. Yeah, I mean, that's what I started with. And then I must say that I reached out to, you know, all the women I knew, whose stories inspired me, and then, you know, they came back to me. And at some point, actually, and there were also, yeah, challenges, as in we all face challenges. This is, you know, during and post COVID period, you know, everybody was just going through so much. So many, although in the beginning wanted to, and not, I must say, the other criteria kind of I had was that I really didn't want many of these many established writers, because I felt that, as you know, whatever you call an established writer, is that there is space for that, you know, their platform. And so these were, I don't want to use these words, but, you know, I also don't want to call all the contributors non-writers or something, because they have written and they're, you know, they're telling their stories. So, but what I mean is that, but I'm talking about that just to illustrate that this was also a challenge, because the women had the stories, but felt that maybe, you know, is it good enough? Will I be able to write for a book? which these are things that we put on ourselves, often, like Anugla, you said that you not from a literary background, but those these things that we often feel or think about. So these were some of the things that we had to, barriers that we had to, challenges that we faced in, although the stories are inside, but being able to tell them, So that was one thing at that point, during COVID. So what we did is that to reach out, actually, at some point I was like, okay, all the people I invited, some of them did submit, and some couldn't submit. And then I was like, okay, let's open it up. Let's do an open call. And I must say that from the open call, I'm glad we did that, because I really reached out. I used to think that, oh, I know everybody in Assam, or I know a lot of people in Assam, a lot of women in Assam and all that. But actually, there are like such beautiful writings that came from women from all over, with my whatever, the extensive network. It was beyond that, that open call reached out to women beyond that. We also thought of reaching out like the boundaries, talking about, or reaching out to different frontiers or different, identities, communities. That there was, right at the beginning, there was also a challenge put, forward by the contributors themselves, some of the contributors, that what do you mean by women? Who are these women? What is women? And then I was like, yeah, okay, what do we say then? And do we say women? I usually say women, cis or trans. And this was a women and trans people, women, whoever wants to identify themselves as, as a woman at whichever point and for whatever reason, that we should include them and their stories as well. So yeah, this is how the book has come about. I'm really hoping that, like Vidisha said at the beginning, that it it will be out in a month or so. Yeah, that's the story of Riverside Stories.
Riverside Story. Yeah, I think it will be. I'm quite positive about that. But also, it's so interesting to hear everyone speak of their own experience of putting together the book, and knowing that all three of you actually come from very distinct backgrounds. And not just like, one similar kind of like writing is coming out in each book. So Anju's book has very different kind of writings. Anungla's brings that it is sad in some ways, but it also is whimsical in certain ways. And Bonner's book is, I think, going to be fun. So, but I also wanted to sort of bring together what all of you have mentioned, how your own practice, like where you are situated from, and your own work has also fed into this kind of like doing this book. So even if Anung has gone to Nagaland in 2015, but the fact that there's a history of storytelling that you carry, Anung, has also fed into like writing and putting together a book like this. And then also being cognizant of who is not included in all these stories generally. So how do you think, like, your practice has also influenced a lot into like building up these communities of storytelling, bringing together? And like, I want you to focus a little bit on your own like journeys and your own practice, like of writing or storytelling. And as women, or like how Bonner said, if you have ever identified as a woman at any point of time, how has that fed into like how you see writings in the region that you belong? Who wants to go first? Anu? Anu has unmuted, so
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've always been writing all my life, and it was always it was like my own therapy. It was, for my own self, and even till today, I very much struggle with making things public or just keeping it personal, because it's my way of dealing with things that I need to deal with, So that has always been there. And also the fact that my mother was writing, and we had access to, reading the things that she wrote, especially the very first book that she came out with, the Ao Naga Oral Tradition, which came out in, I think it was 1999. because, to give a little backstory, I grew up in Shillong in Meghalaya state. Okay, so there was like Nagaland was at such a distance, because we were in this convent school where we were encouraged to only speak English, we were told even to speak English even at home. And the only times that we had any sort of, anything like cultural in that way was like, during certain functions or Independence Day or, like those kind of celebrations, we were encouraged to wear our traditional outfits and come to school. So, I identified mainly as like Naga, just like how other people identify, like named us Nagas in Shillong, we were just Naga. And so there was a certain curiosity in me, because I was like, hey, what does Naga mean? I don't know, I come from the Ao Naga community. And so like, what does it mean? Or who are we? What are we? These were questions that did run through my mind. So when my mother brought out this book of the Ao Naga oral tradition, I at least, finally had something to read, like all the stories that were contained in it, all the different analysis that she had put in there, of our history, of us as a people, of our storytelling tradition. So like that was my first contact actually, through writing, to my roots, my connection to my roots. Besides that, in Shillong, we used to have this Naga Freshers Day, where all the different communities from Nagaland would gather in one place, and there was dancing and singing, and of course now that we are all in this, adopted this new belief system, there was a lot of praying, a lot of prayer. That was my connection living there in Shillong. After coming to Nagaland, suddenly it was like, I was not just Naga, I was like, which community are you from? Which village are you from? Which family are you from? Who is your father? That was like always like the very first question anyone will ask you is like, which village are you from? And what's your father's name? That's when I began to really understand, okay, this is a patriarchal society, and living in Shillong, thinking about it now, I think we were pretty free in that sense. It is a matrilineal society, so there were a lot of women everywhere we went. Women in the marketplaces, even within the family. There was so much of respect given to the grandmother. To the whole lineage, this matrilineal system. Okay, having said that, I will have to mention that it is always also the maternal uncle who takes the final decisions and all that. But besides that, we had this connection to, women and sisterhood and all that. But coming to Nagaland, suddenly, there was this chauvinism and there was just this general attitude that I found a little like, it was like triggering things in me, and it was a bit kind of disturbing me. I was like, oh, but why can't I do this? Why can't I say this? Why can't I go there? Why can't I do that? This kind of thing. So when putting this thing together, there was very much, I felt that yes, we need to address this. We need to really have stories also to talk about it. But I didn't have to press too much because the stories were anyways coming in. Like there's this one personal essay in the Many That I Am, which is called Opening Doors, I think. I'm so sorry, but it's been a while. So where she talks about Aing Benia, she talks about her mother and her mother's siblings, how they were named because they were all female. how they were named. And then again, like their kind of, they were like held back from, going to school and getting educated. But then she talks about her grandmother, who would like encourage her mother to go and study in the night school, and to make, she would be the one to make excuses for, when her mother was not around, and the father was questioning, her grandfather was questioning her mother's whereabouts, and things like that. And so it was like, I was very happy, when these stories started coming in, talking about these things, So besides that, I've always been interested in doing anything creative, So while putting this book together, it was important that even art had to be part of it, because it is another language. And we Naga people are very creative, very artistic. I think we have this artistic gene in us, Even if you look at all our traditional artifacts, all the, even if it's just a simple household item, how beautifully it is made, with so much care to make it a thing of beauty, even if it's just a ladle, spoon, or the handle of a knife, or whatever, And I mean, and forget about the actual finery, traditional finery, how beautifully they found art supplies in nature, and took leaf and feather and stone and bone and bamboo and cane, and did such beautiful things. And of course, cotton yarn and metal and all that. So these stories also contain things like that, talking about even tattoos, because we had a culture, a tradition of tattoo art, and also of weaving textiles. And like
Yeah.
there's this poem, no, by Abakali Moni about the textile, the weaver, and Serawan Kating's story of Yarla and how the tattoo tradition started in our community, and things like that. So if you look at just the artwork in the book, and just the artwork also tells that whole story, carries the narrative forward, right from the very first artwork of Iris Yingzin, which is actually kind of an artistic impression of artistic telling of the actual title, The Many That I Am, and the whole storytelling tradition, and so on and so forth, till the last one-page graphic story, by I'm sorry, I forget her name right now. It just slips my mind. Yeah, but if you look at the artwork also, it's just it's just carrying the narrative forward. So that was very important to me also, that there was also artwork and illustrations in it.
Yeah.
To complete the whole telling. Yeah.
Did connect with, like, how you as an independent artist also looked for those stories specifically, and that sort of thing comes out in like the editorial hand. But like, it's always interesting to know about everyone's personal journeys.
Yes.
Anju, do you want to like sort of carry
Yeah.
forward what
I
Anu?
was listening to what Anungla was talking about, the search, and I was like, there were a lot of things which were similar. In many ways,
Also focus on
the
like your writing as a
yeah,
researcher, journalist, and how that.
the bringing together book was also a part of a personal journey which I have, like which many of us in the Northeast have. Maybe because of the fact that Northeast is has a is that, like, when we try to talk about ourselves in the Northeast, whether as a geographical region or as people, we have this sense of a loss of identity, or as though we are always searching for our identity. We have, like, talking about Manipur was never part of British India. We only became part of India after India's independence in 1949. As like in my own personal journey, we were educated in convent schools. We were like given access to information about India, information about the whole world, literature from the world. So we knew Shakespeare, we knew Rabindranath Tagore before we knew what our own people had written, because this was like a lot of it were not part of the syllabus which we were given. So which like it's only afterwards, like after we grew up and after we went to college and I mean that we started asking ourselves, I mean I started asking myself, like what is my identity, what has what is there, what is the wealth of my people. And so that is, I mean, it was a very late question that I was asking myself. I'm sure like young people nowadays, they are asking this question a little early in life. But that was when I started searching for books, literature, and you'll be surprised. I started reading literature from Manipur, not the one prescribed in the syllabus, when I was reading, when I was studying in Delhi. So I used to go to the Sahitya Academy library because they had this section on Manipuri literature. And that was when I started reading Manipuri literature, and I started realizing, oh, okay, we have a wealth of writing and storytelling here, but how come that most people don't know about it? And that was when I started thinking that maybe translation is a way that can bring this forward. If you look at it, like even a lot of the world literature, a lot of it is in translation, what we are reading. So that was a personal journey. And when Anula was talking, I was also thinking like, oh yeah, we were also like, even now we don't know what is our sense of self. So it's always though we are always searching for our own self, whether we are part of India, we are not part of India. When we go to people from the Northeast with this small feature, when we go to Delhi, to Bangalore, they always call us Chinky, Chinese, Nepali. So like we are like, okay, at every point we have to assert our identity. We had to keep identifying ourselves all the time. And that was why when I started working on this book, I was asking myself, like, from my long years as a journalist, I have written a lot on women, on conflict in the Northeast, like especially Manipur. And there has been a lot of stories, like not filed just by me, but filed by many journalists across the world about how the women of the Northeast, how the women of Manipur, how the Maira Paibi, how Irom Chanu Sarmila, they are doing a lot of things which many men might not be able to do. So I was thinking like, okay, so in the general idea of Manipur and the Manipuri people that people from outside have, they have this feeling that Manipuri women have a high status, they are so well known, they are so powerful, they have so much of strength. But I was interested in knowing, what do women themselves think about themselves, right? So even though there were a lot of women writers, here I want to just bring in one thing that Manipuri women, they started writing only, publishing their writing only in the late, 1950, around 1958 to 1965. That was when they started writing. So which means even if Manipuri literature is said to go back from prehistory, if we look at the court chronicles and all, because we have a script, the women started writing only around 1960, early 60s. So which means women's writing is very late, if you look at it. And but even then, there were a lot of women producing a lot of work. So I was interested in knowing, what do they write about themselves? How do they see themselves? So that was the main theme of the book, Crafting the Word. And I was very surprised that the women writers were writing about a lot of things, about the conflict in Manipur, about friendship, about love, about politics, about a lot of things. But they were not writing so much about themselves as women. So this was the the problem that was there. And so when I collaborated with the women's writers group, Lemerol Korjekol, which is in short form known as Lekol, and Lekol incidentally is a very nice word. It means a garden. So, and when I started talking to them about this, like, I'm looking at how you see yourself, how you write as a woman, how you like look at women, and they were also like quite surprised that that I'm looking at a theme like this. So so it was a journey of storytelling, not just for me but also for them, because then we got a lot of chance to interact. Otherwise, like the usual thing. And here I must point out, like I mean, I want to bring to this thing that when the books were published, Crafting the Word and the Many That I Am, which Anugla did, were brought out as twin books. So it was also very interesting because we have this collection of books from Nagaland, writings from Nagaland, collection of writings from Manipur, and they were so similar, but they were also so different. They were also so different because, like, most of the writing, as Anugla was saying, was written in English. Most of the writings in Crafting the Word are written in the original language, but translated like into English. And you can see in both the books what the worldview of the women themselves are. When we look at the Many That I Am, some of the reviews that, like, there were very good reviews about the Many That I Am, and where they're talking about, like, how women in Nagaland are being able to voice very what they want, what is to be done, and what they feel very strongly. Whereas if you look at Crafting the Word, the tone of the stories, the language that they use is all very laid back, very quiet, and it's small. It's something like an underground river. The way they write, something is there, but it's buried under so many layers of do's and don'ts that even when they are writing what they want to say, they'll bury it within so many metaphors, so many examples, so many characters. There's sometimes the main idea is threatened, like it might be lost. So this was something like, but I want to say that this is a general worldview of these women they're writing. They are supposedly living in a state where the famous Irom Janu Sarmila, the famous Myra Baibis, there has been so much of women activism, but in reality, they are so much buried under the layers of patriarchy that even when they write, they're afraid to write. They're afraid to write about menopause. They're afraid to write about their periods, like about menstruation. They're afraid to write about sexuality. And even when they do bring in this topic, they do so in such a nuanced way. Like it's almost like this is there, but I'm afraid to say it, but I want to say it. So what they do, they will layer it under, bury it under so much of layers that it takes someone to really go deep into it. And this is a kind of storytelling tradition, which is very much unique to most of the Manipuri women who were writing it earlier. But now the younger generation who has sort of started adopting English as their form of expression of for storytelling, they're much more vocal, they're much more explicit. And probably I think that is also to do with the fact that, okay, this is not my language. I'm not saying that they should be writing in English, but somehow the use of a language which is not your own also gives you a certain strength to vocalize things with much more power than saying it in your own language. So that is something which I feel is there among the Manipuri women writer. I think I'm going off the tangent.
Oh, no, Anju. I was also thinking while you were saying how I find it easier to swear in English more than in Assamese, because somehow, like, Assamese, if I swear, I'm like, oh, I'm actually saying a bad word. But in English, I'm like, yeah, this is usual. So I understand what you're saying. But it's very interesting because Bona's also background as a feminist activist who's very disheartened that she has claimed herself, and how it is fed into like actually, building a writing community or even just building the community to, saying that I have an expressive network, I have a huge network, then also saying that there are so many people outside that network who write. But maybe because like of your own positioning as an activist, you're also able to bring those writings together. So, Bona, how would you like to follow up? And then I'll finish up with one last question to everyone.
Yeah, talking about swearing, the first to just qualify that I can swear in all the languages I speak very well. So starting with my own language, but yeah, that's the difference. So yeah, while putting together the book, like I said, that I wanted the irreverence to be very, prominent in that. So when we were talking, with the contributors as well. And I said, yeah, let's just go like, let's, in terms of language, in terms of stories, just go like as whatever you want to say. Don't hold yourself back. But like both of you have shared that in many parts, is that there are many things holding us, holding women back, So I saw that even the women I invited, the contributors I invited, because I knew that they were this irreverent and they may be saying things, on, let's say their Facebook post or otherwise. But while writing, they actually, subdued themselves. I also see that. And I also see there were hesitance in terms of, for example, one I'm not naming, but one contributor who was writing a personal, like I also gave this as an option that you can tell whatever story you want, but you also have the option of telling your story. I would have actually really liked if these were all like just their stories, but some have told their stories and some have chosen to tell, in other forms or other ways their stories. But so one of the contributors who then wrote about her own experience, but was worried because her own experience also included things about her family. Yeah, like her mother's reaction to something that she's doing, or her family's reaction to something that she wanted to do, those things. And then she was worried. She actually called me and she said that, I don't want to publicly defame or say bad things about, that's not what I want to do, but this is also, it's a reality. So that's what, then I told her that as a writer, you have the liberty to choose how you want to go about it. I can't say anything, but I'm saying I'm sharing this is that, this is how it, yeah, like how we what is it? Self-censor ourselves, and that we, that I see in all forms of storytelling, storytelling by women, that also happens. So, that's, yeah. And then talking about, yeah, my journey, yeah, I think the books do reflect on, you would only do something from your experience or as the person, that you are. So for me, it's an opportunity. I really wanted to do it, and also because it's an anthology. It's anthology is selection of stories, so which is like a great power, Like as I've said, that as it is as storytelling, feminists have been using it. This is such a powerful tool. And then to put together, selected stories is an absolute moment of power that you take, like a hold over a certain power that you have. So I have used this as an opportunity to bring together these stories. Like I said again, that I hope that, yeah, that the women's experiences, both their experiences as well as their thoughts, their ideas, their aspirations, their dreams, they often cross the boundaries set by society, by patriarchy. They do that, and we need to keep pointing that out, not as this crossing of boundaries as transgressions or but as a very regular part of our existence, our life. So yeah, I'm hoping that comes across through the stories. Did I answer your question? Actually listening to Anungla and Anjulika, I was just, going everywhere with your thoughts and your words, and I was thinking about so many things. I,
No, I think you did, because I think, like, again, from your practice as a activist and working with so many different communities across Assam, and also acknowledging that you don't want to, like, say that this is inclusive of everything. It is inclusive of, like, whoever is submitting at this point of time. Because I feel like, yeah, no book is ever going to tick mark all of the, marginalizations, and we should also accept that. But
also,
hmm.
I actually said that very bravely in the introduction at some point in the book. When it comes out, you'll see is that my inclusion is not very, like I can't say no, not, but in being inclusive, I opened it up. I wanted to invite everybody and whoever wanted to be. But in my exclusion, I have been,
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a really,
intentional. Yeah,
it's a really
I'm
interesting.
not going to say who I haven't excluded.
I think I obviously know, but I think it's also very interesting, because I, like, recently I think there was a conversation about who should be leading the rights for, like, who should be leading the protest for certain kinds of rights to be put forward. And I'm like, why not, like, upper caste or privileged people, because they are not the ones who will be affected a lot by censorship or by government intervention. So why do we always expect the most marginalized to be the most vocal and most expressive? So I think sometimes that kind of exclusion really works, is what I also think. So last question, Bona, I'll make you start with it. Is there anything you would have done differently? Like, knowing, because this is also, like you have claimed, I have not claimed it, the longest his, history of publishing, the longest book that took to make. But is there anything you'd have done differently, or you think, like, could have been done differently?
Well, the book, and it's just coming out, now I like it. Like, I will say that, whatever has come forward, because it's been, it's the process has taken us there, and I like it. I must say that the stories, I love all of them. Every time I edit it, I go through and I'm like, wow, wow, not my stories. I just love those stories, and I'm quite happy with that. But yeah, in terms of, like I said, that at the beginning, and we tried doing that, but because of the circumstances, we couldn't do it. Like I said, that because most of the contributors are not, let's say, they're not regular writers, most of them. They have the stories, but also, telling a story, making it, in whichever medium you use, but making it publishing ready, let's say, whether it's a, audiovisual medium or print medium, is that it needs a certain kind of, not kind of, but a certain level of putting it together, organizing your thoughts and all of that. And for that, you need a little bit of time. Sometimes you need a little bit of guidance. So I would have been happy if we could do workshops. Next time if I do, I want to do that. And also that I felt that wherever it was that we were discussing the stories, the women could come together. I did take few moments to discuss this with some, not all. Like I said, that the open call contributions came, just straight out. And in that, I felt that everybody actually felt a little better sharing the stories and getting feedback immediately before you put it together, that, yeah, this is a great story or whatever. So, yeah, I would have liked to do it that way. I would have liked to do it that way. In terms of the visual stories in the book, I feel that I should have, I don't know, I can't say this, I don't know, but I feel I couldn't, I mean, then in terms of, if I compare, like, reaching out to women artists or visual storytellers, I feel that maybe they are there and I'm not just being able to reach out. Or if it comments on the fact that there is a gap, there are not many, I don't really know. But I would have liked to have more visual contributions, next time I think I'm going to, if there is a next time, I'm going to look into that.
We wait for part 2 of this book, which will hopefully as you claim, not be.
And I promise I won't take so long if
I don't think you
write the
should
next
promise
book.
I think it's just a part of, I think, feminist writing and storytelling. You have to accept that life will throw contingencies and you will, like, sort of adjust with that. Anu, will you like to go next about what would you have, if you were commissioning this book today, what would you have done differently? Or if there's anything you want to do. You're on mute, Anu.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Yeah. So basically, I think, you know, I work on, I follow my intuition, and, you know, I'm pretty spontaneous in a way when I work on things. But I think I wouldn't change that part of it, because it happened within, you know, within that time frame, and it happened in a very organic way in that sense. But what I would change would be my attitude towards keeping the the time given to me. You know, I think I would have taken like a longer, like, instead of like submitting it on the day it was, you know, I was told to submit it, I would like have taken more time to kind of look at it. And, you know, there are certain things that I could change, but at the same time, I just like to say that this really is what was going on. This was the process, and this is the you know, this was manifested, you know, through that organic process. So I'm quite happy with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Anu. I think it really reflected that process and that time you were in. So I would also not want to change anything in your book. Anju, final question, final response.
Yeah, when I looked at Anungla's book, I was so carried away by all the visual part of the book, the art pieces and then the illustrations, that I was like sort of berating myself. Why didn't I think of this? But maybe because that was because I am more a written word person than an artist. So probably so probably my mind didn't go that far. And then when I listen to Banamalika, I'm like, wow, this is a cool way to bring more voices into the book. But I think every time we listen to other authors and editors talking about their book, we'll keep thinking that, okay, we should have done this, we should have done that. So yeah, there are a lot of things which we could have done differently. But I think my main focus when I was bringing together crafting the word was number one, this is going to be the first collection of women's writing from Manipur, published by a very good publishing house like Zubaan. And this should act as a window to the whole of women's writing from Manipur. That is why when we, in the book, we also included an essay called The Journey of Women's Writing in Manipur, so that this would act as a resource to not only students, but also to other readers to know a little bit more about women's writing from Manipur. And if they are willing to, if they have that background knowledge, and these are just samples of a buffet that is there spread out. So yes, there should have been many other way that I should have done this better. But I feel that the best thing that we can do at the moment, everyone is saying, we should have part 2 of the books. Because the book as it is, as a trailer, as a this was good, but maybe we should explore more. I think that is what I feel, because we were working on certain themes and there were other themes that we were not looking at. We we had one idea when we were compiling these books, So probably now that when we are discussing, a lot more ideas are being thrown around, like what Anungla felt when she was bringing together this book, what Bana feel, should be the what the book should look like. And I'm sure the other editors of the series of Northeast writings from that Zubaan is publishing, like not Inheritance of Words, then like Jeniska book, and then like the other books that you're planning. I think if all the editors come together, that would and discuss how they had planned the book, and I think that would give us a lot more idea on how to plan the next book. And I'm hoping that Zubaan will give us opportunity to plan more books with that.
No,
Thank you, Vidisa.
thank you, Anju. I think for me, the books are great in itself, and I'm not thinking of it as like how to better the books, but like how, like after being in the movement, after the book has gone out to the community, to so many people, and the reception, if there are ways you thought of like doing differently. But like Anung says, I think it's also that like you want to stick to that process and say that that was the process, and now the process might be different. So I think that makes a lot of sense. So I think it was really, really nice to actually have you all in conversation today with us. And I want to thank you all for the time you put together. This was a really, really engaging conversation for me as well, even though I've known the books for quite some time. And like I said, I always learn something new. Before we wrap up the session and I pause on recording, I want to actually ask Chodhan to come on video. I want to thank her for helping me with the recording and also doing the spotlighting. Thanks, Chodhan. Chodhan works with Zubaan and
Hi.
Thank you,
Hi,
Jordan.
children.
yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Any last words, anyone, before I
Yeah.
stop? Yes, Anand.
Yeah, I just want to say that actually, the many that I am, it's actually for the future, it's for the young, because, they're going to, it's there now, and they're going to be picking it up in like many more years to come, because the reception has been amazing. Everywhere I go, there are young people whom I don't know come up to me and say like how much they love the book, how much they've like been inspired by it, and like to actually read these stories, like even what Bana Malika had said, most of these are like just like anecdotes you hear, right? But to actually put it like this in a story form and say like, yeah, this is happening, this was happening, it's actually for the future. And like we're talking about the problems, the conflicts, the resistance and all that in the book, but perhaps in the future the young women will look at it and then try to say like how can we bring about the solution in our society. And also another thing is like the minute that I have to mention this, the whole book has been translated into Tamil, like it was too it was too big a surprise for me to know this. And like also some stories from Anjulika's book, and the many that are crafting the word, and the many that I am, and also inheritance of words. Some of those stories have been compiled together and translated into Japanese. So I just love it. I love that our books are just finding its way and being retold in many different languages. And also we are also now in talks for one story being retold in a different format, in a different audiovisual format. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I hope lots more openings are there for all the books. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Anand. It's always lovely to see the books traveling so much. And like you said, many that I am, I think Crafting the Word has also been translated to Tamil. So it was also quite interesting.
Oh
to
yes.
see, yeah, the kind of books that got that reception, like people reading Tamil wanting to know about stories in the Northeast. So it just gladdens my heart. But yeah, thank you all. Thank you so much. And yes,